The unknown sleeping passenger. On a quiet night in rural India, a woman boarded an overnight bus heading to her hometown. The journey was long, and like many passengers, she hoped to sleep through most of it. The bus was a standard model, typical of India's intercity fleet, designed for capacity rather than safety. Its windows had no protective grills, opening fully to provide ventilation in the hot climate. As darkness fell, the woman found a window seat and settled in for the night. The gentle rocking of the bus soon lulled her to sleep. The roads narrowed as the bus traveled through a less developed area, with two-way traffic squeezed into lanes barely wide enough for single vehicles. Despite the dangerous conditions, the driver maintained highway speeds. Around 2 a.m., with most passengers asleep, the woman shifted in her seat. Perhaps seeking cooler air or a more comfortable position, she unconsciously leaned toward the open window. Her head drifted partially outside the bus frame, extending into the path of oncoming traffic. At that moment, a truck approached from the opposite direction. The driver couldn't see the woman's head protruding from the bus window. In a split second, the truck's metal frame struck her exposed neck region at high speed. The impact was catastrophic and immediate. The force was so violent that it completely severed her head from her body. Medical examiners later documented a clean transection at the C3-C4 vertebral level, a textbook decapitation. Death was instantaneous. Her brain lost all blood supply in a fraction of a second. Other passengers awoke to screams and chaos. Some witnessed the headless body still seated, blood pumping from the severed arteries. The bus driver pulled over, but there was nothing anyone could do. She had died without ever waking up, without realizing what was happening. The case became noteworthy in medical forensic literature as a perfect storm of preventable factors: inadequate safety features, narrow roadways, and the vulnerability of sleeping passengers. Malicious collision. On a busy morning along Basanti Road near Kolkata, state bus driver Subir Kumar Das began his regular route. The 50-year-old was a veteran with over 2 decades of experience navigating the crowded streets of West Bengal. His bus was filled with commuters heading into the city, many standing in the aisles due to overcrowding. What Das didn't know was that this wouldn't be an ordinary day. A truck driver named Alif had been waiting along the route, watching for Das's bus. With him was a helper named Mohan. The two had allegedly planned something that would turn a routine commute into a deliberate killing. As the bus rounded a curve, Mohan reportedly gave a signal to Alif. The truck suddenly accelerated, aiming directly for the driver's side of the oncoming bus. Das had only seconds to react, but the narrow road left him nowhere to swerve. The vehicles were on a collision course. The truck didn't hit the bus head-on. Instead, Alif precisely aimed for the driver's window. The impact shattered the glass and metal frame of the bus. The force was so violent and calculated that it caught Das's head and neck in the worst possible position. As the two vehicles scraped against each other, the leaning frame of the bus acted like a guillotine. Das's head was pulled outside the window by the initial impact. Then, in a fraction of a second, the metal frame of his own bus severed his head completely from his body. Passengers screamed as they saw their driver's headless body slump over the wheel. The bus careened out of control for several meters before crashing into a roadside ditch. Some commuters later reported seeing Das's severed head on the road as they evacuated the crashed vehicle. Police investigation revealed that this was no accident. The position and timing of the truck's approach suggested premeditation. Alif and Mohan were later charged with what investigators called one of the most disturbing vehicular homicides in the region's history. Ceres Bus falls off 30-meter ravine. On a clear morning in the Philippines, Ceres liner bus number 6289 began its journey from Iloilo to Antique. Behind the wheel was Ricky Serios, an experienced driver familiar with the winding mountain roads. Also on board were the conductor and fare collector Wilmar Marcelino. The bus was filled with passengers, many of whom were returning home after visiting relatives. The journey started normally, but as they approached the mountainous region near Barangay Igbukagay, something changed. Witnesses later reported that Serios pulled the bus over to the side of the road. He climbed out and bent down, inspecting something underneath the vehicle. Several passengers saw him pointing at what appeared to be a mechanical issue. After a brief discussion with Marcelino, they decided to continue. This decision would prove fatal. As the heavily loaded bus approached a sharp curve in the road, passengers reported hearing an unusual grinding noise. Then came a moment of terrifying clarity. Serios could be heard shouting that the brakes weren't responding. The bus accelerated downhill, unable to slow for the approaching turn. At the curve, the bus smashed through the guardrail at full speed. For a brief moment, the vehicle was airborne. Then gravity took hold. The bus plummeted into the ravine below, tumbling and rolling as it fell 30 meters down the steep incline. Metal tore, glass shattered, and human bodies were thrown violently inside the cabin. The impact at the bottom was catastrophic. The bus's frame collapsed, crushing many passengers instantly. Others were thrown through windows or pinned under twisted metal. Serios was crushed by the steering column, dying immediately. Marcelino was found impaled by a section of metal frame, still alive but bleeding profusely. Rescuers had to rappel down the ravine to reach the wreckage. When they arrived, they found a scene of horror. 17 people, including Serios and Marcelino, were dead or dying. Some victims survived the initial impact only to succumb to their injuries while trapped in the mangled bus, waiting for help that would arrive too late. Bulgaria-Turkey tour bus Inferno. On November 23, 2021, a bus carrying tourists departed Istanbul, Turkey, heading for North Macedonia. Most passengers were ethnic Macedonians returning from a weekend holiday trip. The vehicle was a modern Basitrans coach, equipped with reclining seats and air conditioning for the 8-hour journey. Among the 52 people on board were entire families, including 12 children and twin 4-year-olds. The bus traveled through the night, making good progress on the highway. Around 2 a.m., it approached the Struma motorway southwest of Sofia, Bulgaria. The road was relatively empty and weather conditions were clear. Passengers were mostly asleep, lulled by the gentle vibration of the engine. At 2:30 a.m., for reasons investigators could not fully determine, the driver failed to negotiate a gentle curve in the road. The bus drifted from its lane and scraped against the metal guardrail at a highway speed. What should have been a minor collision quickly escalated into something catastrophic. Within seconds of impact, witnesses on the highway reported seeing flames erupting from the underside of the bus. The initial collision had apparently ruptured the fuel system. Gasoline spilled onto the hot engine components, creating an immediate and intense blaze. The fire spread with terrifying speed throughout the entire coach. Passengers awoke to a nightmare. Thick, toxic smoke filled the cabin before many could even understand what was happening. The temperature inside rose rapidly, turning the bus into an oven. Some passengers near the front tried desperately to reach the main door, only to find it jammed from the impact. Only 7 people managed to escape. They later described breaking a window and squeezing through as flames consumed the bus behind them. For the remaining 45 passengers, including the 12 children, there was no escape. The fire's intensity was so extreme that it melted much of the bus's aluminum frame. First responders arrived within minutes, but there was nothing they could do. The bus had been reduced to a blackened shell. Inside, the victims had suffered one of the most horrific deaths imaginable, trapped in an enclosed space while being burned alive. Many were found still in their seats, their bodies charred beyond recognition. Engine trouble. On a warm morning in Noida, India, 22-year-old Mukesh Kumar arrived at Sarvatam International School for his job as a bus conductor. Kumar had been working this route for nearly a year, responsible for ensuring children boarded safely and reached school on time. The vehicle was a standard yellow school bus, large and boxy, weighing approximately 7 tons unloaded. The driver, Santosh Chand, started the engine as usual, but immediately noticed something wasn't right. The bus made a grinding noise, followed by an irregular rattling from underneath. With no students on board yet, Chand decided to investigate before beginning the morning pickup route. He called Kumar over and explained the problem. "Something doesn't sound right," Chand said. "Can you check underneath while I try the engine again?" It was a routine request, something Kumar had done several times before. The young conductor nodded and walked to the front of the bus, then knelt down to peer beneath the chassis. What happened next occurred because of a tragic miscommunication. Kumar had not given any signal that he was in position. Chand, assuming Kumar was standing safely to the side, turned the ignition key. The engine roared to life. Then, either through a mechanical failure or driver error, the bus suddenly lurched forward. Kumar had no time to react. The massive front wheel rolled directly over his midsection, crushing his internal organs between the tire and the concrete of the school parking lot. The pressure was immense, approximately 3,500 pounds, concentrated on his abdominal cavity. His ribs splintered, puncturing his lungs. His liver ruptured instantly. Despite the catastrophic injuries, Kumar didn't die immediately. School security guards heard his screams and rushed to the scene. They found him conscious but trapped, his body folded unnaturally beneath the wheel. Chand, realizing what had happened, froze in horror. First responders arrived within minutes, but faced an impossible situation. Moving the bus might cause further damage, but leaving him crushed meant certain death. They decided to reverse the vehicle carefully. As the pressure released, blood that had been contained now flowed freely. Kumar gasped for breath as his punctured lungs filled with fluid. He was still alive when loaded into the ambulance, but died before reaching the hospital. The autopsy revealed he had suffered complete crushing of the abdominal organs, massive internal bleeding, and traumatic asphyxiation. Asafo-Akyem Crash. In the early hours of March 22, 2021, 2 buses traveled in opposite directions along Ghana's N6 highway. From the north came a Tamale to Accra passenger bus, driven by 39-year-old Emmanuel Asante Opoku. Moving southbound was another intercity coach operated by 55-year-old Kofi George. Both vehicles were filled with sleeping passengers, many heading to work or to visit family. The highway near Asafo-Akyem is a 2-lane road cutting through rural Ghana. At night, it's poorly lit, with visibility limited to what vehicle headlights can illuminate. This section was notorious among local drivers for being dangerous, with limited overtaking opportunities and frequent heavy truck traffic. At approximately 1:30 a.m., Opoku approached a line of slow-moving cargo trucks ahead of him. Perhaps growing impatient or misjudging the distance in the darkness, he made a fatal decision. He pulled into the oncoming lane, attempting to pass not just one truck, but 4 in succession. The maneuver would require almost a kilometer of clear road ahead. That clear road did not exist. Coming around a slight bend was George's bus, its headlights suddenly appearing in Opoku's path. Both drivers had only seconds to react. Witnesses reported seeing brake lights flare briefly before impact, but at a combined speed of over 160 kilometers per hour. There was no possibility of avoiding collision. The buses met head-on with catastrophic force. The impact was so violent that the front sections of both vehicles were completely destroyed. The engines were driven backward into the driver compartments, crushing both Opoku and George instantly. Their bodies were so severely mangled that first responders initially couldn't distinguish them from the twisted metal. The collisions forced threw passengers from their seats. Those in the front rows suffered the worst injuries as seats tore free from their moorings and collapsed forward. Limbs were severed, skulls crushed, and internal organs ruptured by the sudden deceleration. The sound was described by survivors as like a bomb going off. The carnage spread across the highway as 19 people died either instantly or within minutes. Bodies and parts of bodies were scattered amid shattered glass and torn metal. Emergency workers described the scene as the worst they had ever encountered, with the dead and dying intermingled in the wreckage so completely that it took hours to separate them. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.